Welcome to the deep dive. Today, today we're going to be tackling a topic that you specifically requested,
Okay.
iron,
Yeah.
and its impact on your health.
All right.
Yeah, you sent over some really interesting research, and I've got to say, I'm already learning a lot.
Great.
It's like you want to understand iron from the ground up,
Yeah.
what all the different lab tests reveal,
Uh-huh.
and what happens when things get out of balance.
Absolutely.
So to kick things off, can we just start with the basics? What exactly is iron, and why is it so crucial for our bodies?
Well, iron is a mineral, and it's absolutely essential for life.
Okay.
It's a key part of hemoglobin,
Okay.
the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen throughout your body.
Right.
Without enough iron, your body can't produce enough healthy red blood cells,
Uh-huh.
and that leads to all sorts of problems.
Okay, so iron is like the VIP backstage pass that oxygen needs to get to where it's going.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
But it's not just about oxygen transport.
Right.
Iron's a real multitasker. It also plays a critical role in energy production,
Uh-huh.
helping our cells convert food into usable energy.
Uh-huh.
And it's involved in immune function,
Oh, wow.
helping our bodies fight off infections.
Wow. So iron is kind of a superhero nutrient.
It is.
But, I've also heard that too much iron can be a problem.
Yeah.
That seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Wouldn't more iron mean more energy and better oxygen delivery?
That's a common misconception.
Yeah.
While iron is crucial, like many things in life, balance is key.
Right.
Just as you wouldn't want too few delivery trucks on the road,
Hmm.
you also wouldn't want a massive traffic jam.
Uh-huh.
Too much iron can actually damage organs like your liver, heart, and pancreas over time.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do we know if our iron levels are balanced? That's where all those lab tests come in, right?
Right.
I see terms like serum iron, TIBC, transferrin saturation, ferritin.
Yes.
It's a bit overwhelming.
It can definitely seem that way. But each of these tests gives us a unique piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding your iron status.
Okay.
It's like having a toolbox to diagnose and manage conditions related to iron.
Okay, I'm ready to unpack that toolbox.
All right.
Let's start with serum iron.
Okay.
What exactly does that test measure?
Serum iron measures the amount of iron that's circulating in your blood at any given time, bound to a protein called transferrin.
Okay.
Think of transferrin as the delivery truck,
Hmm.
and the iron is the package it's carrying.
So serum iron is like a snapshot of how much iron is actually on those delivery trucks at that moment.
Exactly.
Right.
And the normal range for serum iron can vary, but it's generally between 60 and 170 micrograms per deciliter.
Got it. So what about TIBC? What does that stand for and what does it measure?
TIBC stands for total iron binding capacity.
Okay.
It measures the total amount of iron your blood could carry,
Yeah.
or the total carrying capacity of all those delivery trucks.
Okay, so if TIBC is high, it means
Mhm.
there's a lot of space on those trucks.
Right.
And if it's low, it means the trucks are pretty full.
You got it.
Okay.
A high TIBC could suggest iron deficiency, while a low TIBC might indicate iron overload.
Right.
The normal range for TIBC is generally between 240 and 450 micrograms per deciliter.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these tests fit together.
Yeah.
Now, what about transferrin saturation?
Okay.
That one sounds a little intimidating.
It's not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay.
Transferrin saturation is simply the percentage of transferrin that's actually carrying iron.
Okay.
Think of it this way.
Uh-huh.
If transferrin is a bus carrying iron passengers,
Okay.
transferrin saturation tells us how many seats on the bus are filled.
I like that. Okay.
A low saturation means the bus is mostly empty,
Right.
which could suggest iron deficiency.
That's a great way to explain it.
Yeah,
So we combine the serum iron and TIBC results, we can get a sense of the transferrin saturation.
precisely. And the
Yeah.
normal range for transferrin saturation is typically between 20% and 50%.
This is fascinating. Now, what about ferritin? That one seems to be measuring something different.
You're right, ferritin is different because it reflects the amount of iron stored in your body,
Okay.
primarily in your liver, spleen, and bone marrow.
Okay.
Think of it like checking the inventory levels in the iron warehouse.
So ferritin is like checking the reserves,
Yes,
while the other tests focus on the iron that's actually in circulation.
exactly.
Okay.
And the normal range for ferritin can vary depending on your age and gender.
Okay.
It's important to have a doctor interpret your results in the context of your overall health.
All right. So we've covered serum iron, TIBC, transferrin saturation, and ferritin.
Yes.
What about hemoglobin and hematocrit?
Right.
Those were mentioned in the research you sent too.
Good point. While hemoglobin and hematocrit don't directly measure iron,
Mm.
they are important indicators of your red blood cell health, which is, of course, closely tied to iron levels.
Right.
Hemoglobin, as we mentioned earlier, is the protein that carries oxygen within red blood cells.
Okay.
And hematocrit measures the percentage of your blood that's made up of red blood cells.
Okay, so these tests all work together to paint a picture of our iron status.
Yes.
But what happens when those levels are out of whack?
Right.
That's where things can get a bit more complicated.
You're
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll dive in next. We'll explore what happens when iron levels are too low or too high, and how those lab results can help us diagnose and manage these conditions effectively.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a good handle on the different iron lab tests now.
Yes.
Let's dive into what happens when those results come back outside the normal ranges.
Okay.
You mentioned that iron deficiency is one of the most common nutritional deficiencies worldwide.
It is.
What causes it, and what's actually going on in the body when we don't have enough iron?
Iron deficiency happens when your body's iron stores are depleted,
Mm-hmm.
and it can't produce enough hemoglobin.
Right.
This can happen for a number of reasons. Not getting enough iron through your diet,
Okay.
blood loss, or even certain medical conditions that interfere with iron absorption.
So it's more complex than just eating enough iron-rich foods.
Exactly. It's not just about how much iron you consume.
Right.
It's about how efficiently your body absorbs and utilizes it.
Okay.
Things like blood loss from heavy periods or internal bleeding can deplete iron stores, and certain gastrointestinal conditions can impair iron absorption.
That makes sense. You also mentioned that iron deficiency often leads to anemia.
Yes.
Can you break down that connection for us?
Sure. Anemia is a condition where you don't have enough healthy red blood cells
Right.
to carry adequate oxygen to your body's tissues.
Yeah.
And since iron is a key component of hemoglobin,
Right?
iron deficiency is a very common cause of anemia.
Okay. So iron deficiency leads to low hemoglobin,
Yes.
which means less oxygen is getting to where it needs to go. That sounds pretty serious.
It can be.
What are some of the signs that someone might be iron deficient?
Well, the lab tests we discussed earlier can be
Sure.
very helpful in identifying iron deficiency.
Okay.
You would typically see low serum iron, high TIBC,
Okay.
low transfer and saturation, and low ferritin.
Okay.
These results indicate that your body is craving iron.
It's like the body is sending out an SOS saying, we need more iron over here.
Exactly, and that's why paying attention to those lab values is so important.
Yeah.
But beyond the blood work, there are also some common symptoms you might experience if you're iron deficient.
Okay, like what? I'm all ears, because this feels super relevant to a lot of people.
One of the most common symptoms is fatigue,
Okay.
that feeling of overwhelming tiredness that doesn't go away even after a good night's sleep. You might also notice that you're paler than usual,
Okay.
especially in your gums and the inside of your eyelids.
Right.
Shortness of breath, especially when you exert yourself, is another common symptom.
Okay.
And some people experience dizziness or lightheadedness.
That's really eye-opening. It makes you wonder how many people are attributing their fatigue to stress or a busy schedule when it could be iron deficiency.
That's a great point. It's always worth discussing any persistent symptoms with your doctor to rule out any underlying causes.
Absolutely. So we've covered what happens when there's not enough iron.
Right.
But what about the flip side, iron overload?
Iron overload occurs when your body absorbs and stores too much iron.
Okay.
This can happen because of a genetic condition called hemochromatosis,
Okay.
where the body doesn't regulate iron absorption properly.
So it's like the iron warehouse is overflowing and there's nowhere for the excess iron to go.
That's a great way to put it, and just like having too much clutter in your house can cause problems.
Yeah.
Having too much iron in your body can damage organs over time.
What kind of damage are we talking about?
Excess iron can build up in organs like the liver, heart, pancreas, and even your joints,
Oh, wow.
leading to inflammation and scarring. Over time, this can increase the risk of serious health problems like liver disease, heart problems, diabetes, and arthritis.
It's a bit scary. How would someone know if they had iron overload? Are there any specific lab results that point to it?
Yes, those lab tests we talked about can be really helpful in diagnosing iron overload.
Okay.
You'd typically see high serum iron, low TIBC, high transfer and saturation, and high ferritin.
Okay.
It's basically the opposite pattern of what we see in iron deficiency.
So it's almost like a mirror image.
Exactly. And just like with iron deficiency, there are symptoms that might indicate iron overload,
Sure.
though they can be subtle and easily mistaken for other conditions.
What are some of the red flags to watch out for?
Common symptoms of iron overload can include fatigue, joint pain, abdominal pain, loss of libido, and even bronze or gray discoloration of the skin.
Interesting. So fatigue can actually be a symptom of both iron deficiency and iron overload.
It can, which is why it's crucial to consider the whole picture lab results, individual medical history, and any other symptoms that are present.
Okay, so we've talked about iron deficiency and iron overload.
Yes.
You also mentioned something called chronic disease anemia earlier.
Yes.
What's going on there?
Chronic disease anemia is a type of anemia that often develops in people who have certain chronic illnesses, like infections, inflammatory disorders, or cancer.
Okay.
It's not caused by a lack of iron in the diet,
Okay.
but by the way, the body handles iron when inflammation is present.
So inflammation is kind of the wrench in the system here. How does that work?
When your body is dealing with chronic inflammation, it releases a protein called hepcidin,
Okay.
which actually blocks the release of iron from stores
Uh-huh.
and reduces iron absorption from the gut.
So even if there's enough iron available, the body isn't able to use it effectively because of the inflammation.
You got it. It's like the body is hoarding iron, even though it might have plenty available.
Oh, wow.
This can be a protective mechanism in the short term,
Uh-huh.
but if it goes on for too long, it can lead to anemia.
I see. So how does chronic disease anemia look different from iron deficiency anemia when we look at the lab results?
That's a great question, and it's an important distinction.
Okay.
In chronic disease anemia, you typically see low serum iron,
Hmm.
normal or low TIBC, low transferrin saturation, and normal or even high ferritin.
Okay.
This is different from iron deficiency anemia,
Right.
where ferritin is typically low.
So even if someone has enough iron stored up, they might still be anemic because the inflammation is blocking the body from using it.
Exactly, and that's why treating the underlying chronic condition is so important for managing this type of anemia.
It really highlights how complex iron metabolism is and how it's connected to so many other processes in the body.
Yes.
But let's not forget that iron levels can be influenced by factors beyond just disease, right?
Absolutely. Age, gender, diet, and certain medical conditions can all play a role.
Okay, let's unpack those a bit. How do age and gender come into play?
Well, men generally have higher iron levels than women because of blood loss during menstruation. And our iron needs change throughout our lives, especially during periods of rapid growth like childhood and adolescence and during pregnancy.
Makes sense. No, let's talk about diet.
Yeah.
What are some things people can eat to boost their iron levels?
There are lots of delicious iron-rich foods out there.
I like that.
Red meat, poultry, and fish are great sources of heme iron,
Uh-huh.
which is the type of iron most easily absorbed by the body.
Okay.
You can also find iron in plant-based foods like beans, lentils, and fortified cereals.
Right.
These contain non-heme iron,
Okay.
which isn't absorbed as easily but can still contribute to your overall iron intake.
You mentioned lentils earlier. Those are a fantastic source of iron, but I remember reading that they also contain phytates.
That's right. Phytates, tannins, and polyphenols are compounds found in some plant-based foods
Okay.
that can bind to iron and make it harder for your body to absorb it.
Right.
Calcium can also interfere with iron absorption, so it's best to avoid taking calcium supplements at the same time as iron supplements.
So it's all about timing and smart food pairings. Speaking of iron-rich foods, I recently tried that lentil stew recipe you recommended.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just say my kitchen looked like a scene from a horror movie after I pureed those lentils. But hey, it was delicious, and my iron levels are probably thanking me.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's a great example of how you can incorporate iron-rich foods into your diet in a tasty and enjoyable way.
Absolutely. And what about medical conditions? How can they impact iron levels?
Certain medical conditions can affect the way your body absorbs or uses iron.
Okay.
For instance, gastrointestinal disorders like celiac disease or Crohn's disease can damage the lining of the intestines,
Right.
making it harder to absorb nutrients, including iron.
Uh-huh.
And chronic bleeding from conditions like ulcers or heavy menstrual periods
Yeah.
can also lead to iron deficiency.
It seems like there's a lot more to understanding iron levels than just popping a supplement.
Yeah.
This has been incredibly insightful.
I agree. It really highlights how important it is to have a good understanding of your individual needs and to work with your doctor to address any concerns.
Okay, so we've covered so much ground in this deep dive into iron.
We have.
We've talked about how iron works in the body, the different lab tests that help us assess our iron status, and the various conditions that can arise when iron levels are out of balance.
Yeah, it's clear that iron plays a vital role in our overall health. And understanding our individual needs is crucial for well-being.
Absolutely. And, our source material did a great job of explaining the science of iron,
It did.
but it didn't really address how understanding your iron levels can empower you to make more informed decisions about your health.
That's a fantastic point.
Right.
Imagine this, you're feeling constantly drained and just can't seem to shake that fatigue.
Right.
You get your iron levels checked and it turns out you have iron deficiency anemia.
Yeah.
Suddenly, those afternoon slumps and that brain fog make a lot more sense.
It's true. Knowing that information can be a game changer.
It really can.
Yeah.
Armed with that knowledge, you can work with your doctor to address the root cause of the deficiency, whether it's through dietary changes, iron supplements, or treating an underlying medical condition.
Right. Or let's say you're experiencing joint pain and fatigue, and your doctor discovers you have iron overload.
Right.
That's information that can lead to a targeted treatment plan and potentially prevent long-term damage to your organs.
Exactly. It's all about connecting the dots and understanding how seemingly unrelated symptoms might actually be linked to iron imbalances.
So to our listener, as we wrap up this iron adventure, we encourage you to think about how understanding your own iron levels can empower you to take control of your health. Are you experiencing any of the symptoms we've discussed? Have you ever had your iron levels checked?
If you have any concerns, don't hesitate to talk to your doctor. They can help you interpret your lab results, identify any potential issues, and work with you to create a personalized plan to optimize your iron levels.
Knowledge is power, and understanding our bodies is an ongoing journey. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of iron.
You've been listening to the Learning Podcast, a production of metaNESTA. Remember, learning is a journey, one step, one insight, one skill at a time. We'll see you next time. Keep learning, stay curious, and as always, be awesome.